When I wrote Vision is Not Enough, 5 Keys to Becoming a Next Level Nonprofit, it was after I was really new to the nonprofit sector, and these were my first 5 impressions of what I thought would help the nonprofit sector move ahead. And it was kind of ironic because the next year after I wrote this, I think I wrote this in January 2012, and then that year, 2012, I read 20 books on nonprofit management and figured, oh, I know so much more now about the nonprofit sector and what it takes to succeed. And I went back and read my ebook a year later, and I'm like, hey, I'm still right, you know, from my ideas. And so it was kind of funny that I read the book, and I was like, my ebook, and I said, okay, you know, this is, despite the 20, 30 books I read about nonprofit management that year, plus hundreds of blog posts, I still really believe that these are some of the keys that you need as an organization to kind of move to that next level. And I'm not saying that in a bragging way. I'm just saying that, just from research, and I really feel that these things would help. So number 1 key being, next level leadership, wish that you were better. I got this quote from Jim Rohn, and he's like, don't wish that it was easier, wish that you were better. And this comes back to what we talked about, the self-leadership stuff. In the nonprofit world, most of the time it's going to be hard. Staffing issues, HR issues, board issues, money issues, client issues, legal issues. Like, it doesn't end in the nonprofit sector just because there's so many stakeholders in that organization's success, right? And so if you are waiting around for your nonprofit life to get simpler, it's not going to happen. It's always going to get harder. And that's what they say about any kind of leadership. Like, as the reason why they pay higher up CEOs more and more money so they can buy more and more painkillers, because going up the ladder doesn't make life any easier. If anything, you get more and more problems. And that's okay if you know that that's what it is, right? I always say, like, the CEO job description should be chief problem solver, because that's your job. You're not there to look good. You're there to fix problems, and to expect that it's going to be happy and fields and clients hugging you and success stories all the time, it's totally naive. So I really believe that the number 1 key to becoming a next level nonprofit is for you personally to, not focus so much on expecting the circumstances to change, but you becoming a better leader to match those circumstances. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that?
Yes.
So like if you're having HR issues, let's just say you're having issues with your staff or a lot of high turnover, you don't blame the organization, you don't blame your staff. You work on you becoming a better recruiter, a better interviewer, better at screening, better at human resources. Like, you look at that as an opportunity to sharpen those skills, right? Second thing, next level strategic action. Success is always inconvenient. This is the big one for leaders in any sector, for-profit, not-for-profit. Everybody wants to improve, but nobody wants to make the time to do so. And it's always going to be inconvenient. There's never, ever a good time to hire a coach, take a training class. Never. You got to do it now. You got to make it work. You got to force the issue. You got to just decide that, there's going to be no window at some time in the future where you have more time. That does not exist. So once you accept the fact that it's always going to be inconvenient if you want to take action to move yourself ahead, then it makes it easier. I hear this all the time. I talk to organizations and CEOs and would talk about, okay, for example, they're having some issues with whatever it is. And I said, hey, well, why don't you hire someone to help you kind of fix that? And they're like, oh, I'm so busy. Well, it's not going to fix itself. Like, you've got to commit, and you got to, like, fix it, right? It's never going to feel right. It's never going to be the right time, right? So it's getting over that belief that there's going to be a future day where you've got nothing on your schedule. That's totally ridiculous to think that. Number 3, simplified work. There's no prize for being the busiest. We've talked about that. As a CEO, you should only be responsible for a fixed number of things. You do not need to do everything. Again, at this event I went to, the executive director, she was running around like a crazy person. She was like all over the place, freaking out, crying. She was like losing it at this banquet that we were putting together. And I looked at her, and she's really young. She's only like 24. So it's incredible what she had been able to do. But I looked at her and I just said to her, I said, you are the leader here. You do not need to do everything. That is why all your volunteers are here to help you. Like, stop the craziness, right? I said to her, I'm like, she was trying to fix something on her computer. And I said, you know, stay here for 1 second. I went around, asked one of the volunteers, you know, does any one of you really good at PowerPoint? And they were like, yeah. I brought over one of the volunteers who did good at PowerPoint. I sat him at the computer, got her the heck out of there, right? I'm like, you go get dressed, you practice your speech, stop. Just stop the craziness, right? And that's what I mean is, like, we've been taught as a culture that busy represents productivity. It's not true. And so if you think you're going to get a prize for looking like you're the busiest person on staff, stop trying to win that game, because it doesn't get you anywhere. Be efficient, be effective, be smart with your time, be available. You know, you should have free time every day, a little bit of time, you know, and if you don't, again, I would really challenge you to look at your schedule and identify the areas where you're wasting time, right? You know, staff retention, you're only as strong as your team's buy-in. This is a huge problem in the nonprofit sector. Turnover in the nonprofit sector is incredibly high, higher than the for-profit sector. It's hard to recruit, train, retain staff, because in a lot of cases, the nonprofit will pay less than like a comparable position. They may not pay benefits. They might be working more hours. So because the key to the nonprofit recruitment is you got to find that person who's passionate, but also the person who's got the skills to do the job you need them to do, which is kind of, in a lot of cases, kind of a hard combination to fill, right? But the thing is your ability to retain your staff is going to be the key to your organizations to having any kind of success. Because if people keep leaving and coming and leaving and coming, you're never going to get any traction, right? You're never going to get any momentum towards hitting your goals. So a big chunk of your time has to be dedicated to making sure your team is bought in, they're getting theirs, they're excited, they're okay, they're engaged. And you're not a slave to your staff. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. But you have to be aware of what's going on, because again, a lot of nonprofit leaders assume that because their staff is working in the nonprofit sector and because it's like a humanitarian issue or something equivalent, that they will work for less, work for free, work for more, because they assume that their staff is as engaged as the CEO, which in most cases is not the case, right? And
how many people do they usually have in the team?
Depends on the organization. I mean, you've got everything from 2 people to like 2,000 people. It really depends.
Wow.
But you know what? Your staff is there doing a job. You know, in some cases you're going to have someone who will like work more for less, but I think that would be the exception, where you have to treat your staff like they are there to do a job, and you have to respect them as a staff person and expect them that they need something from you, as opposed to you just expecting them to give. I think that's unrealistic. So making sure that your team is bought in is a huge key. And then number 5, networking, diversify your marketing. This is one thing we kind of talked about as well. In fundraising, a lot of people, they pick their favorite type of fundraising and then they just run with that. One thing in the nonprofit sector, I have a lot of colleagues who are fundraising professionals, and they're like, the key is to diversify. So you've got grants, you know, you've got donors, you've got planned giving, you've got a capital campaign, you've got an event. You've got like multiple sources of revenue. Maybe your organization sells a product, like you can retail a product, and that's another source of revenue, right? And it would take a lot of stress off a lot of CEOs if they had multiple streams of revenue, and I understand that that can take a lot more work to do, but you're not going to get the ups and the downs when you are as well diversified. So those are my five keys.